My introduction into the CIA or to the CIA was an interesting process, and I have to go back in time for you to understand what made the CIA interested in my powers. It started with the Mossad. I started performing in Israel in 1960, end of 68, 1969. And I was introduced to generals who actually came to see my shows in house parties, in private parties, and so on. And everyone was amazed, and I was approached by a general, and he asked me, what else can I do with my mind? This is a segment of my life that I cannot really talk about, but I can tell you that I worked for Mossad. The information I used to bring back to Israel's secret agency was so precise that they wanted to know how I do it. How does the human mind, how does it create a possibility, a doorway, for me to be able to bring information that otherwise they couldn't? The Mossad decided that they don't have the ability, the computers, the electrodes, the scientific departments to study Uri Geller. So they pick up the phone and call up the CIA, because the CIA and Mossad were working together for many, many decades. And I guess they still do. So they asked the CIA whether they would test me. And of course, the CIA jumped on the idea because they were very concerned. The CIA were concerned that the Russians were ahead of them in psychical research. Now, the CIA already got information about me, and they make a deal that the Mossad lets me go, releases me. And I leave in 1972, straight to Palo Alto, California, to Stanford Research Institute. And that's where Dr. Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ and Edgar Mitchell and all those scientists who had very direct links to the CIA, they set up the experiments with me. So that was the beginning.
This film describes a 5-week investigation conducted at Stanford Research Institute with Uri Geller, a young Israeli. The film portrays experiments that we performed with him just as they were carried out. Each scene has been taken from film footage made during actual experiments. Nothing has been restaged or specially created.
The experiments in Stanford Research Institute conducted by these scientists for the CIA and the American Defense Department, they were all done under controlled, laboratory-controlled conditions. Actually, one of the scientists, Russell Targ, was a magician, so he knew trickery and so on. They built a Faraday cage, or maybe they already had a Faraday cage at Stanford, and I sat in this Faraday cage, in this shielded room, and drawings were done outside the room or in houses of the experimenters, and I was not allowed to touch them, and I had to sit in that room with a marker and paper and duplicate the drawings that were inside the sealed envelopes. And I was 100% correct almost all the time. Some drawings were millimetrically the same size. I explained it that I was so precise because I had time. On a stage, not under laboratory controlled conditions, in a show, I don't have time. I can invest 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes into a telepathical routine, but there, trying to receive a drawing with extrasensory perception, I could sit for half an hour. One of the most complicated one was a bunch of grapes. They drew 24 grapes, I got 24 grapes. If you measure the size of the grape, it's the same size, really incredible. Then they had very different drawings like the devil, which strangely enough, call it religious-wise, mentally, I couldn't get the devil. What I did get are the 10 Commandments, planet Earth, and a trident that the devil was holding. I'm mystified by that. There was another drawing which wasn't done by human beings. A computer, which probably was at the basement of Stanford Research Institute, picked out a word out of a dictionary, I believe, that's to the best of my recollection, and it drew a kite with a tail, and I got it. I got the kite, and they were amazed. Now, while these experiments were going on, I managed to affect the computers in the basement of Stanford. The rumor is that I erased computer tapes, and that's when the CIA say, what? He can erase computer tapes with his mind. And then I did experiments with floppy disk, where I put my hand over the floppy disk, because there were floppy disks then, and I would erase the information. This was vital for the CIA, because later on I did erase computer tapes that KGB agents were taking out of Mexico City with secret information. I'll talk about that in a moment. But one very well recorded incident that happened inside Stanford Research Institute in Palo Alto, California, where scientists put a weight on an electronic scale under a bell jar, so nobody can say that I blew on it or I moved it, and under charts that measure movements precisely. I made that weight lose weight. It levitated probably, and it's all under controlled conditions. And then, this is amazing, we took a break from one of the experiments, and I think it was Hal Puthoff, who is a physicist, and Russell Targ, who took me to the canteen of Stanford Institute. And I was eating ice cream, and I put a scoop of ice cream into my mouth. And I feel something metallic in the ice cream, so I spit it out onto the table. And Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, picks it up, and he says, "This looks very familiar to me." It was an arrowhead, a broken off arrowhead. As we walk in the corridor of Stanford Research Institute, we all hear a clang on the wall, back, back, back. And on the floor falls the second half of that object that I found in the ice cream. And Ed picks it up. You know, Ed walked on the moon. He puts it together and he says, "Oh my God, this is my tie pin. I lost it years ago on a beach in Florida." Wow, a genuine dematerialization.
Here's another double-blind experiment in which a die is placed in a metal box, both box and die being provided by SRI. The box is shaken up with neither the experimenter nor Geller knowing where the die is or which face is up. This is a live experiment that you see. Geller guessed that a 4 was showing. You will note that he was correct, and he was quite pleased to have guessed correctly. We decided at the outset to carry out the die and box experiment until we got to 1,000,000 to 1 odds, at which time the experiment was terminated. Out of 10 tries in which he passed twice and guessed 8 times, the 8 guesses were correct, and that gave us a probability of about 1 in 1,000,000. We would point out again, there were no errors in the times he made a guess.
One scientist called Kid Green, who was, I think, the head of the scientific department of the CIA in Langley, Virginia, Puthoff told Kid Green that I can see things from afar. And Kid Green's reaction was, "No, he can't." And Hal told him, "Yes, he can." And Kid Green says, "Well, where is Uri Geller?" And Hal Puthoff says, "Uri is right here." Now, you must understand, this is way before Skype and FaceTime and mobile phones. This is all, the old-fashioned black telephones. And Kid Green says, well, okay, Uri, I got on the line with Kid Green. By the way, while all this is going on, I still don't know that this is CIA stuff. I think this is some scientific colleague in the Washington area.
And I picked up a book, which is the same book that I had on my desk at the time of this phone call many, many years ago. This book is a collection of medical illustrations of the nervous system. And I had it on my desk at the headquarters building because I was using it for part of my work. And I opened it up to a page and I just stared at it. And he said, well, seeing something kind of strange.
And I say, well, I start drawing things and I throw them, I crumple them up, throw them in a dustbin, until finally I get a drawing which looked to me like scrambled eggs. But very, very strongly, I had the word architectural come into my mind. Architectural or architecture. So I write it on my drawing above these scrambled eggs that I drew, the word architecture. And that's it. So I deliver the drawing out of the Faraday cage, or I can't remember where I did it. All I know is that I was on the phone with someone in the Washington area, with a scientist.
Later got a copy of that drawing, and I was astonished to find that what he had drawn maybe does look like scrambled eggs, but it was a cross-section of the human brain, a sagittal section from the side of the human brain. But the thing that caught my attention was he had written across the top of his drawing the word architecture. Architecture. I had written in my handwriting the word architecture of viral infection. I was looking at the biological warfare effect on the nervous system of a threat virus. And I'd written in my notes, book, architecture of a viral infection.
And I got it. And that, I believe, convinced Kid Green there's definitely something here that has to be studied. And I think that a lot of money was released to study paranormal research, psychic research, and to set up remote viewing research.